Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Book Banter. I'm Tanya E. Williams, literary historical fiction author, and today we are chatting with historical Christian romance author Jennifer Lynn Cary, who likes to say, "You can take the girl out of Indiana, but you can't take the Hoosier out of the girl." Now transplanted to the Arizona desert, this direct descendant of Davy Crockett and her husband of 40 years enjoy time with family, where she shares tales of her small town heritage and family legacies with their grandchildren. She is the author of the Crockett Chronicles series and the Relentless series, as well as the standalone novella Tales of the Hobnob Annex Cafe. And her recent split-time novel, The Traveling Prayer Shawl, is seeing great reviews. So please, welcome Jennifer to Book Banter.
Hi, Tanya. Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just excited to be here.
We're so happy to have you. We're so happy to have you. I have to tell you that your latest title, The Weather Girls, Book 1, which is Sunny, it's a book 1 of a 3-book series, arrived at exactly the right time in my world. I needed a lighthearted read to take my mind off things. Life's been a little bit overwhelming in the last several weeks. I'm definitely finding the back half of the pandemic a little more challenging just overall. And I think it's probably just something that we've never had before, pandemic fatigue, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I think we're all there and we're like, it's like trudging through mud continually. So,
Yeah.
so right? Like we need a little bit of lightness, a little bit of love, a little bit of happiness, and your story delivered that. So thank you. Most people who know my reading taste will know that I'm not a huge romance reader, and I probably say that to like every time on this Book Banter session. But I do enjoy a good love story. And The Weather Girls kind of feels more like a love story to me. And I enjoyed that easy nature and how it flowed. Can you tell us how the idea for the series came to be? Because it's quite a unique idea.
Well, I'm a baby boomer, and I appreciate my parents' music. I will enjoy the big band stuff. I like all sorts of different music, even classical. But my favorite is the oldies. And my husband and I listen to the oldie station all the time. It's just I can remember where I was at when I first heard a song, or things that happened, or whatever. And the music just speaks to me. And so we often have that going on when we're going someplace. And this one particular day, I don't know if two of those titles came close together. I don't know. But it was just, it kind of hit me, and I'm going, that'd be great titles for a book. You'd have to have 3. It's got to be a trilogy. Oh, okay. Sunny, stormy, windy. Okay, I could do that. Boy, what would I call? And The Weather Girls just kind of hit. It was like, okay, now we're fleshing this out. And I probably stewed on this, at least 6 months, if not longer, before I ever put down a word. Just trying to figure out how this would all work together. How did they get their names? And I hadn't been gone from the Relentless series too long, which the main time frame of that is 68 to 1971.
Okay.
So I really love that. I put much of it close back to my Indiana roots, so it was easy to just kind of start drawing on it. And I felt like I was finding a niche, and I wanted to just kind of camp there.
It's comfortable. It
is.
And though there was lots going on in the world, it was a time in American history where you could just kind of just be in America, even though there was lots of other things going on worldwide. It was small town America existed. That really comes across.
Yeah.
I like that. And I also like the link of how they all got their names. I think that was really cool.
Well, it
Smart.
Yeah, it was important to me that the people who actually wrote the songs and performed the songs had the credit due them. But I needed a link, and when I realized I had kind of, I don't know if it was the need to figure out a link first, or the father. I think I hadn't figured out exactly how I was going to link it, but I knew it was going to be through the father, and that he was going to be a session musician. And Tommy Tedeschi used to be part of the Wrecking Crew, and he's one of those names that you wouldn't know his name, but you know his music. If you ever listen to Bonanza, the theme to Bonanza, that's him.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And the Wrecking Crew, I mean, Leon Russell was part of that, and the songs that these guys played on are legendary. And so that we're talking world class. And so I just made the dad a member of the Wrecking Crew, but he had been there, and I'm thinking he would have been there as music changed, and who would have been there, and who could. I had more fun going online to figure out what were the specials going on TV, because the musical specials, we had Andy Williams, we had Cass Elliot, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, all these people were doing. Andy Williams was big. And so just the music he could get into, and the things, and what kind of jam sessions, so he became so fun. And I was able, by building him out, I was able to find the links to pull them in, and it just worked.
It totally works. Yeah, it totally works. And that was fun, actually, going down that path, because I wasn't quite born yet in that era. I was close, but it was actually, it was like, oh yeah, okay, I can see where that, because I'm a big music fan as well, and so I kind of go through depending on what era I'm writing, I'll listen to the music of that era for inspiration, because I think music does shape our world immensely. So,
oh, it does.
It really, really makes an impact. And I love how you can take a song and literally a lyric and paint an entire picture. I think that's a real talent.
Oh, it's fun. Well, the people who write the lyrics to music have to be so concise. Yes. So every word has got major weight. And when you close your eyes and just think about it, yeah. So
pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. While we're talking about this, I just wanted to bring it, I know people want to know, okay, you got what comes next, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but because I learned something. I love this whole thing. So my next series is called The Weather Girls Wedding Shop and Venue, and they're going to be all standalones, but they're taking a girl's name from a song and putting it on there, Judy,
okay,
Sylvia's mother. And in doing the research, I learned it while I was working on Weather Girls. I found there was a DJ out of Chicago, out of WLS, that I really liked, named Chuck Buell. And I found an interview he did, and he's talking about getting with Dr. Hook, of Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show, saying Cover the Rolling Stones, Sylvia's mother. Okay. He together with him, and he said, he was in California, and I think it was near Monterey, and he says, hey, come on over. We're going to the marina. I want to meet a friend of mine. And he's hanging out, and it turns out this is the guy who wrote the words to Sylvia's mother and Dr. Some funniest stuff. I had no clue. It was Shel Silverstein.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh,
I'm not. It's like, and so, I mean, he's the king of making every word count.
Yeah.
And when you make those words count, and you can get that picture. You get the picture so clear, and you can see that song or that story play out in your head. Mm-hmm. Are you? I'm sorry. I try to keep talking and just keep going.
No, I'm like, I have a tickle in my throat that's been, it's been there for over a month now, and I had the flu and it went away, but the tickle remains. So, my apologies, everyone.
No, I was just worried about you. So.
I probably should have gotten a nicer looking glass than my Camelback water bottle, but but this is live in the real world, so
yeah.
So As a historical fiction fan, I'm usually looking to be immersed in a different time and place. And I actually really adored the historic mansion. And I could see the characters living their lives within its walls. Is the fictional setting inspired by a real location?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Can you tell us about the town and the mansion then?
Okay. Kokomo is my hometown. And it's not the one the Beach Boys sang about. It's the one Betty Grable and Dan Daly sang about. Indiana, 31 miles north of Indianapolis.
Okay.
But it's also fiction in the fact that we're relying on my memory. And we moved away from there when I was 16 years old. And so I was old enough to have some good, strong memories, but there's been enough time passed that they get faulty. So if I bring up an actual location, I will try to find things, but I will never talk bad about something that was very real. If I mention somebody like Dr. Schwartz was the doctor who delivered me and all my siblings. And I remember his office. I remember the man. I loved him dearly. He was sweet, and he wasn't the one that gave me the shots. The nurse did. So he
disassociated himself for a reason.
But I mentioned different places. Scotty's Hamburgers.
Yes.
That was a place I went. I went out there. My dad took us there to talk to us when he was going to start dating again. I remember what those booths looked like. I remember being out with a guy after a play rehearsal or something, and he says, "You want to get a Coke?" And yeah, let's go to Scotty's. And he goes, "You're the first girl who ever said I want to get a Coke and ordered a Coke." Well, if I didn't want a Coke, I'd get something else. So little things. And one of the fun things is I'm putting things out on my site, little things every day, and I found a commercial for Scotty's Hamburgers. It's not there anymore.
Oh, it's not. Oh, okay.
And it's about 10 years after my time setting, but you still get a little bit of it, because it was a real place, and I loved Scotty's.
That's kind of fun. And what about the mansion?
The mansion. The mansion is the Cyberling Mansion. And in Kokomo was just a nice little farming community until on the edge of town they found natural gas back at the turn of the 20th century. And manufacturers and entrepreneurs came in, and Mr. Cyberling was one of them. He built this mansion that was just gorgeous. Carriage house included, and he only lived there a few years, and then he went on to Peoria, Illinois, and other people bought it. I think it changed hands 2 or 3 times. And then finally, I think the county actually ended up with it, and they let Indiana University have a campus, like local campus there, and that was good. I mean, they would have their sock hops in the ballroom, and I think the basement was where the library was or something. Anyway, so it was really cool, and they had classes in the carriage house. The local civic theater would hold their tryouts out in the carriage house. I tried out for The Bad Seed when I was a kid out in the carriage house. The Historical Society. I remember when I was in high school, I was on the newspaper, and so I fell in love with this place. But when they moved out and started the actual campus for IUK, the place fell into disrepair, and the Historical Society finally was able to generate enough interest and cash interest to be able to start remodeling, and they did a fabulous job. But you can go online. If you go onto YouTube, you can take tours through it. Through the Cyberling Mansion in Kokomo. It's SEIBERLING, I believe.
Okay, cool.
And it's you can get close-ups of the wood around the door frames, and the stained glass throughout is local. The Kokomo Glass and Opulence Factory is world renowned. When we were back there a few years ago, we took our granddaughter on a trip, and I showed her where I used to live, and that kind of stuff. But we did a tour, and we actually ended up with a special tour because it was in between times. And so they took us all through the factory. We watched glass getting blown. We saw stuff, and we found out, I mean, Elton John hires them to build stuff for him. Yeah. And it's world renowned. And they're the ones that did the glass Cyberling Mansion. And
that's
I mean, and they sell to Tiffany's.
Oh,
that's
wow. Yeah. They're in the game.
They're in the game, and they've been there for over 100 years, well over 100 years.
Wow. There's a story there.
There's a story there. Yeah, well, I will have a character who works there one of these days.
That would be really cool, because that you could deeply explore. And glass blowing in general is just such an art.
Oh, it is.
I used to walk down. I used to work in downtown Vancouver, and I'd walk down to the glass blowing place because they would just open their doors because it was so hot inside. They just open their doors, and I'd stand there with my sandwich and watch. Like, it's free entertainment, and it's really, really interesting. I was mesmerized by the craft. So
yeah.
Cool.
You know, I'd seen it on TV, but to see it actually happen is stunning. I wouldn't be good at it, but I certainly can appreciate others doing it. It's impressive. Yes. So with regards to the Weather Girls, I counted probably more than 4, but the 4 very headstrong women that I picked out were the sisters and the grandma. Did you find yourself having a favorite when you wrote that story? When you wrote Sunny, book 1? Not necessarily a favorite. I found a bit of me in each one. And Sunny was the eldest, and was 14 when they moved to grandma's. I was 14 when my mother died. And I remember feeling like I needed to take care of my siblings, and I understood that. I didn't have to do it like she did because my dad remarried a few years later, but that I remember that feeling of responsibility and being a firstborn. Stormy was a teacher, and I was a teacher, very passionate about my students, loving my students, and you know, I had an incident where I thought I wasn't ever going to be able to teach again, and I ended up getting a new opportunity that worked. And so I was very grateful for that. But I know that moment when you have to say, you know, and then Wendy, it was one mother, and I had before Phil and I met, and so I know about having to make decisions and think that through. And then, of course, I'm a grandma. Yeah. Hazel and I really understand each other. So you know, I was able to pull from very personal depths for each one of the women, and so
that's really cool, because it's a great way to take your life and sort of take a segment of it and insert it into characters. That's very clever. I think we do it naturally, and yet we oftentimes as authors, we tend to go, no, that's not me. That's my character. So owning it is a new experience.
Yeah. But sometimes I don't think about it until, I kind of poured myself, how are they feeling? And then afterwards I can look back and go, well, yeah, that's how I felt.
Isn't it interesting? I often don't end up thinking about it until somebody asks me a question, and then I go, wait a minute. Then I go, oh, okay, that's a good comment. Okay. Light bulb's just clicking on now. So does the next book in the series feature a different character at the helm then? Do they go through?
They each get a turn. Not Hazel, but the next one will be Stormy, and coming out, it's going to release October 9th. Oh. And then the third one is Wendy, which will release November 9th. So we're doing rapid release.
Holy crow.
Yeah.
That's ambitious. Good for you. Congratulations, because that's
well, it was not the plan. Yeah.
Really never is.
Yeah, life threw a few curves in a few people's laps, and it's just it ended up being a godsend in the long run. It was not the plan. Last year I wrote and wrote and wrote, and it was, I lost track of how many books I wrote. I wrote so many words. I could figure I could kick a book out once I started writing within 6 weeks, easy.
Really?
Because I set my goal, I had it laid out, and if I didn't meet my goal Monday through Friday, I had to make it up on Saturday. And so I was just very diligent about it. And then this year, everything seemed to crash, and I've had to learn. I've got a new T-shirt that says "Get used to different," and that's just what it is. So aside from my devotional, I'm still working on the first novel of the year. I'm to the point where if it was last year, I'd be done in a week, but I'm hoping by the end of the month to be done with the first draft.
This is where grace comes in, right? Yeah. We need to give ourselves grace. I've had the same struggle, and I thought that I'd be able to have 3 books ready to go this year. And I'm like, it's the end of September. I'm not going to make it with even one. So I've had to really just reevaluate and apologize to my readers and say, I promise there's more coming. It's a little harder right now.
Sometimes
the story.
Yeah, with the little literary license, I mean, it's, sometimes when you're working, you just say one foot in front of the other, just one foot in front of one word in front of the other, one word in front of the other.
Exactly.
And if you made progress, then that's what counts.
Yep, exactly. I build it into 500 word chunks, and that's about all you can do. So I always find myself intrigued by other authors' processes. So can you tell us how your process unfolds from idea to finished product? Is it, I mean, you touched on it briefly of how it has changed with the pandemic and life and other challenges and whatnot. But typically, how does that happen from idea to book?
The idea just really stews with me quite a while. I just have to kind of sit in there. I have to see how the flavors blend, and it spends a lot of time, and I'll ask questions and all. And that's what gets me started. And Jennifer Crosswhite has got, she teaches on this, and she's written the book, Eat the Elephant, but she discussed the nugget and the novel blueprint, and that she's her method. And I put that right on Scrivener, and I start with that. Then once I've got some ideas going, and so once I've got that, I can start plugging in those things. I use enneagrams to get deeper into characters. But I need to know what the wound is. But by blocking all that out, about 2 weeks of that, then I feel like I'm just, and also in that I set up, and I'm willing to change it. In fact, I've gone back and changed it quite often, but 2 scenes per chapter, X number of chapters. And I figure if each scene, I decide, is it going to be 1,500 words? Is it going to be 2,000 words per scene? I try and keep it around that because I don't want it to be so long it's going to drag out, and I don't want it to be short. So I guesstimate that, and then I figure out about how long I want the book to be word-wise, and then I do the math. This is how I'm going to write 5 days a week. How long is it going to take me to get this done in this period of time, and set that up. And that's the way I set it up. And once that is, I've got my goals plugged in, and I start popping it in there. I do find I can't do well with editing and writing something else. I have to be kind of all immersed. Yep. So sometimes what I will do, like what I did with Weather Girls, I've got all 3 of them written in rough draft. Then I went back and I started the process. Yep. And
it's interesting. I think we have a similar process, which is interesting. You're the first person that I've come across that has a similar one to me.
Oh, really? Really? Then I'm not weird.
We're in a group of our own, and we're good.
Yes. So, I like to start off with Pro Writer Aid.
Yeah.
Just because it will it catches the echoes. That's one of my things.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it doesn't match Chicago Manual style, but I can get the worst of the stuff out. And once I've done that, then I send it to Word, and I print it out and I move it around, and then I have Word read it to me. And by the time I've gotten through all those steps, I'm ready for my first readers, and then my beta readers, and then my street team. And the sad thing is, even by the time it hits my street team and my editor, or my editor and street team, they're still finding stuff. And it's like,
the typos that sneak past amaze me. I'm like, we're all pretty intelligent people, and yet we still manage to miss typos. I think they like multiply like rabbits once the book's already published, and then go and filter out among the pages.
I agree. I absolutely
want to give a shout out to Stacy, who's here joining us, and she says that she loves hearing about your writing process. It's fascinating, all the ways that writers approach it. And I agree. It's one of those standard questions for me, because I think partly I want to glean something from others, but I think I also have been looking for that validation that, you're not nuts. You're actually doing it the way. And, there's no right ways, I should say. There's different approaches because we're all so unique and individual.
Exactly.
So I think that's cool, though. And I think that, like for both of us, I think we both write about family. And I know family's at the core of the books that I write. And I've always been interested in why people behave the way they do. And insight into family is kind of like a big petri dish when it comes to human motivation, because if you're going to see it, you're likely going to encounter it somewhere in your family.
Yeah.
And you touch on topics like forgiveness and love and misunderstanding. And that allows us as readers to gain an understanding of what other families might be like from a safe distance, which is key, right? I think part of the reasons why we read is that safe distance. We can experience life, but we don't have to get bogged down in the how do we fix it ourselves part. So when you sit down to create a story, do you have an idea of what aspect of the relationship you're trying to explore within the story? Or is it just sort of diffused out?
Yeah. Oftentimes I don't even know what the true theme of the story is until it's finished. But I know it stems from the wound, the main character's wound. And when they, and I'll get a general idea of that. And sometimes it starts with the physical or the outer. And then how is that, did that happen because of the inner or spiritual wound, or did the spiritual wound happen because of the outer? And so then it's that balance of trying to figure that out. And once I've got that, inner outer thing going, the story will come together. There, and having someone you can brainstorm with is Jen is one of my Jennifer Crosswhite and Diana Brandmeier, both big, and I know I can say, hey, what do you think, or whatever.
Absolutely.
They're honest about it. They will say, we're here, that person's not likable, or and so but by the time you talk it out, it helps, and we do that for each other, which is wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And Diana's saying that she loves Sunny, and I would agree. I did too. I really love that character. So.
She's been a great cheerleader from the first. I got the first, I think, paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs of the first chapter, and shot it out to her and Jen and a couple of Angie Bredenbach and Liz. My brain just went.
Starts with a T.
She's written more books. She's gonna hate me for this one.
Tomlinson? Is it Tomlinson?
Yes, Tolsma. Okay. Tolsma. Liz Tolsma. Liz told me, you got me enough. I kept going. I talked to you about Liz Johnson earlier, and it's like couldn't.
That's it's so funny that it's. our brains don't take a straight path anywhere. They like to bob and weave, and it's usually it gets pointed out by my family in a conversation. In fact, just last night, it's like, "Whoa, sharpen that turn, Mom, where are you going?"
Have you read Lisa Cron's books on story?
I've got it. Story Genius. It's sitting
Story Genius,
right almost within reach, and I'm like, oh, she gets me.
She does. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, years and years ago, I was supposed to speak before these people, the hospital board, and I was just a parent, a nobody, but I wanted to get my across, and I said I learned by analogy, and I told them the story. It brought about, I didn't realize there was a reporter in the room. He had to interview me, and one of the guys on the panel took it personally, and he was just, but that was the power of telling my feelings in a story. And so story is key. And that's go back and they find, if you were to go and say, you need to do this, you're doing this, and this is the problem, they will bounce back. You hand them a book about somebody going through what they're going through, and they go, oh.
It's really, it's a great way to enlighten without cramming it down anybody's throat.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty. I mean, story is the one thing, like, out of all species, humans are the only one that pass down story that we know of. I can't speak for the apes, I guess, but they don't confide in me regularly. So, but that's something that we have in common. So we are wired to be, and that's her other title, wired for story. And it is about that process and how the brain works to hear a story and what we're expecting from a story, which is pretty cool. It's a slower read for me just because I'm trying to absorb every morsel, but I'm making my way through it.
It's really, really good.
So when it comes to research, because you write historical, how much time do you spend writing versus researching? Like, do you have an endpoint for research? Like, I know I have to have an endpoint. Like, I still research, but I have to have a hard stop on the deep dive of, you're just doing this for fun. You're no longer doing it to benefit a story.
I get that. No, there's research going on when I'm still mulling. There's research going on when I'm doing, I don't want to call it an outline. I'm a pantser, but my guidelines. That's more what it is. They're guidelines. Because even when I set up the little cards on, the inspector cards on Scrivener, I will set them all up. And if you were to go back to what I'm writing, I'm going, that's not what. And no, I took a left turn, but I stayed in the guidelines. And so it's just, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you were telling me how much research you do, but you continually research.
Yeah, but I do that, and when I'm writing, and I'll write myself, and then we'll start brainstorming. Go, oh, I need to look that up, and I'll start, and I'm editing. I'm going, oh, maybe, and I'm still doing it. And then I'll be finished with the book and it's out in print, and I'll find something going, oh, that was so cool. I should have had it in there. Well, how can I write another book that I can work that in?
Right. So, guilty as charged as well, because I totally do that. But I also, I will deep dive and spend a month and a half just researching and just writing notes so that I'm immersed in something.
I got to show you. This was, okay. This book right here.
Oh, Relentless. Yeah.
Yeah. Relentless Heart. This was Vietnam. And now I remember back from a 12-year-old's mind. Okay. The year was 1968. I was 12. And I remember my dad's cousin showing up at the house late one night. His family was in Peru, and he had just gotten home, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, but he had decided, he'd said hi to his family. He wanted to come see my dad. And there's this knock at the door, and he came in bigger in life, and he was home from Vietnam,
Wow.
And so I remember later on doing summer stock theater. And one of the main characters was terrified. He had just graduated from high school. He was 18 years old, and his number was 2. And he goes, I don't know what to do.
Chills.
And just on and on like that. And my son-in-law, my youngest one's husband, his grandfather, towards the end of the war, was shot down and MIA. They never found him. And his dad even testified before Congress, And so I'm getting this. That's who the book is dedicated to. But so there were enough oral stories and things that made me want to go, okay, I need to know more. I found this incredible. Somebody had done their master's thesis on this, and on the when in Saigon, during Tet, when the embassy was hit. Mm-hmm. And so he was taking, and I finally looked at it closer, and he's mentioning this person and saying later in career became this, this rank. And I'm looking, he was there. The guy who wrote it was there. He was writing his thesis. I had, eyewitness, and he went through and explained why there was problems, what, how each incident happened and why things were crazy and how people got shot and what time they got shot. And he explained the training these men went through and what was lacking that caused the problems. And it was there was no way I could put all of it in, but I could put flavors of it in because of that.
And that's really what historical does, is it flavors something. So it's, different mindsets, different society, different, it's not just, the era of the clothing and stuff like that. There's a flavor of societal norms. And sometimes I find people don't necessarily understand that, for example, in the early 60s, divorce wasn't a thing to do, or, like it's you. And if you were a husband in a bad situation, divorce really wasn't an option because your wife, whether she was a good wife or not, was going to get the children. So it's those kind of things. And we get so used to looking at things through the lens of today. So I think that's where historical really does. Those touches of flavor remind us of where we've come from. And hopefully, when we know better, we do better. That's the hope. I'm really hoping we learn something through this whole thing here going on. So
exactly.
It's for me, I enjoy the idea stage of a novel when I can think about it and imagine it like a movie playing across my mind. As I make the leap from idea to the page, I usually find myself a little reluctant to let go of the dreaminess of the idea. Do you have a favorite time in the story's journey, or do you love it all the same and embrace every aspect of it?
I'm kind of with you on that. It's always better in my mind before I start writing. But the first, because of that, I think I spend an awful lot of time trying to make that first part very strong to match what I'm in. And when I get close to the end, I'm so excited that middle. Sometimes I feel like I'm slogging, and it's just hard to write that middle.
Yeah.
Until we brainstorm, and then I find the key. It takes me another chapter.
Isn't that true? It's just that missing link.
Yeah. Now editing, there's parts that are good where, I find a key that I can make it better, and then I'm excited about that. But searching for the correct commas and the periods and
I I think, I don't know about you, but as I would have to say that I don't think that my grammar is necessarily top notch. I mean, I think it's sturdy, but it's definitely not top notch, which is why I love my editor so very much. I really don't understand why she changes the sentence like this. But she does. And all of a sudden that is now right. And I go, I don't understand why it's right, but it's okay. She made it better. So
I understand that. I will think I'm sending something so clean to my editor,
yeah,
and then I'll get this back and I'm going,
there's a lot of lines
how
through
did
this.
that happen? But you're right. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Irene is watching and she is saying it's interesting to hear about the process. It sounds like we are struggling right along with our characters.
It's true. Oh, it's
agree.
true.
I agree. That is pretty much what happens. And maybe that's part of the journey. Maybe that's just if we just embrace that aspect of that, in order for our characters to progress and learn and deal with their emotional wound, we have to be like a backpack following them, and just kind of live their experience. So that's a very good point.
Do you dream about your characters? Do you have conversations while you're writing?
Yeah. My characters like 3 a.m. Yeah. They're noisy, and some of them are pushy. Others I can sort of pacify, but there's been a few in the past that have just been downright rude. So they definitely talk, and they do talk during the day as well, but in a different way. It's subconsciously while I'm trying to sleep. It's just they just filter through, and it's almost like they're having a conversation with each other as well. So
okay, yeah. I get that. Sometimes I feel like I'm part of the group, and we're doing something, but they talk past me, and maybe I can throw something in, but that's
but you get a real vibe for them. Like you really understand them because of it. Of course, probably everybody watching is thinking we might be a little loopy, but
but you can picture them. You hear their voice,
Yes.
And it's if you're looking up to them, if you're looking them straight in the eye, if you're looking down at them, it's like
it changes who they are, but it also allows you to sort of immerse yourself in how they would view things and how they would respond. It allows you to be true to the character themselves, for sure.
Yes.
It's not necessarily easy. It's just part of it. And I just kind of take it into account that, especially early on in the process, I'm going to have a lot of sleepless nights. If you get going, it gets a little easier, and you just show up, and because once they're cemented, you're good to go with them.
Yeah.
So what do you find to be the biggest challenge in your author career?
Currently editing. That final editing, it's just, I come back and there's more errors, and my poor formatter's having to make changes and fixes, and I try so stinking hard trying to get this right, and so it's kind of crushing at times. But the thing is, marketing is tough, and it's a reality when you're talking with someone who's read your book or who's read a different book, and just communicating. That's wonderful.
Yes.
And what we're doing here, just chatting, that's amazing. When people contact me, there was where'd it go? Oh, it's back up here. Hobnob came out. This was actually my parents' restaurant in Kokomo.
You're kidding?
Yeah, it was the real thing. And it was Dick and Fran Goodell. And so I'd finished this one, and I had a cousin. Do you want to write a story about it? And I think she kind of envisioned it like Love Boat kind of thing.
Which is back on air now.
Yeah. But instead, I started thinking, and I knew there was some actual incidents. And so I took 3 really the things that generally happen. Colonel Sanders really did go to my dad's restaurant and cooked the chicken for one day. And my dad turned him down. He was driving around in his old caddy, sleeping in the back. And he would come in, he'd cook the chicken for the day, and then he would talk to you at the end and say, "Do you want to do a franchise?" The second franchise in the entire organization is in Kokomo, but it wasn't my dad. My dad turned him down because he said, as good as the chicken was, he wanted control over his menu.
Yeah.
And the next guy got control over his menu, and I think it had to do with that conversation. That's my thought.
Interesting. The bartering.
And my uncle really did do that stunt in the beginning of the story. My dad really did run the cafeteria at Libby's Canning Factory, where we were always told that was where tomato juice was invented. So just saying. And Rosa, the girl who's mentioned in here, was not that old. She really was a girl. Her dad really was the foreman of all the migrant workers. And he and my dad got to be very good friends. And he eventually moved his family to Kokomo. But before that, she was my pen pal.
Oh, fun.
We were like first grade, and she was down in Mexico. And I would tell him what to say. He would translate to Spanish, send it to his wife. She would tell her what to say. He'd send it back, and he'd translate it and read it to me. So
that's cool.
And there really was the Palm Sunday tornado that did all that damage. There really was the ride along. I think the part that hurt me the most was the fact that, it broke my heart. Before I wrote this, I had been back to Kokomo for a reunion, and I ran into a man, Bob Sargent, who had been a friend of my dad's. He was a police officer. He was in the ride along. He eventually became chief of police and then the mayor of Kokomo. And I got to see him and I got to talk to him before this was written. I got thinking, I want to know what happened on that ride along. I want to know what really transpired. And I tried to contact him. I called my cousin and she said, "I'm so sorry. Bob died 2 months ago."
Oh, shoot. Oh.
And he was the last one living who would known what happened in that car ride. So, anyway.
Wow. And, and I should mention to everybody watching that if you'd like a copy of an ebook of the Tales of the Hobnob Annex Cafe, you can pop over to JenniferLynnCary.com and subscribe to her newsletter, and you can get that in your inbox. So
it's absolutely free.
It is a pretty cover.
So, you know what? There was somebody who contacted me. When she was growing up, her mother worked afternoons and evenings at Stellite Factory. And so her dad would pick her up after school and take her to a restaurant. And there were 3 restaurants they'd go to. And her favorite was called the Hobnob. But everything she looked up online had it on Markland Avenue. Well, that was my uncle's. And he's the one who got my dad in business. And so she mentioned this for years. We're talking for years she was looking for this, trying to find out about this place. She knew it was on Morgan Street. And she finally mentioned it to somebody who said, "Oh, that wasn't the Hobnob. That was the Hobnob Annex." And she goes, "Oh." So she Googled it, found my book, read it, contacted me through the website, fell in love with it, ordered copies. Her best friend was Dr. Schwartz's daughter. And he's mentioned in here too. So got her a copy of the book. And then she got in touch with one of the newspapers in town, the editor, who contacted me, and they did a whole thing on the book. And so it was like blue. So you never know what's going to happen.
You never know. You absolutely, it takes one person is all it takes. And you never know who that person's going to be. And that person probably doesn't know who they are. That's the beautiful thing about life. Happy surprises. Happy surprises. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer.
I was glad to be here.
So it was great to have you. You can pick up Jennifer's books at Amazon, and I put a link below for your reference. So don't forget to follow her on Instagram, and be sure to sign up for her newsletter to grab that copy of the novella. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Be sure to give us a thumbs up. Oh, there we go. Find the camera and hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified about every new episode that comes up for Book Banter. Until next time, friends, grab a good read and escape for a little while. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.